Oh, yeah. There we go. Welcome, everybody. Hello, hello, hello. Happy Monday. Happy Agitation August Monday, which makes it better, right? Welcome to my channel. My name is Margaret Pinard. I'm a historical fiction author and an eclectic reader. And as part of that eclecticism and promotion of critical thinking, we're doing Agitation August during this month, which is a intensive interview series where I invite lovely guests on to talk about a book that shook them up. So we're going to be talking about this one today with Melinda from A Web of Stories. So say hello. Tell us a bit about your channel and what you like to talk about there.
Okay. My channel, let's see, I started as a book blogger, so it kind of transformed through various things into Booktube, and I read pretty widely. I will try pretty much just about anything, but yeah, I tend to read really widely. Historical fiction and mystery tend to be my two big genres, but they're probably still a pretty small slice of the pie of what I read. So, and I'm very unscripted. This is what you see is what you get with me. So.
And the historical fiction mystery, does that mean that you like historical mysteries as well?
I do, if they're done well. Yeah. I mean, well, anything if they're done well. I tend to, lately, I have been enjoying literary mysteries, which can often be historical more than maybe like your usual series mystery, things like that. But
Indeed. Excellent. Well, welcome to my channel. And I read some of the same, but the readathon-ish interview series is actually pretty nonfiction heavy. And you chose a nonfiction as well that was already on my TBR. It's Attack from Within by Barbara McQuade. So tell us a little bit about how this came into your life and why you first read it.
Okay, so I had been familiar. I'm going to call her Barb McQuade because that's how I know her. I don't know her personally.
Okay. How do you know her?
So she has been on a lot of like cable news. I don't watch cable news, but she's been on a lot of podcasts. And she is currently a co-host of a podcast called #Sisters-in-Law, where she's one of 4 co-hosts. And
Sisters-in-Law, I get it. Former
she's a former U.S. attorney. And so I've always enjoyed listening to her. I really like her take on things. And then while listening to that podcast, she mentioned she had a book coming out, and then she mentioned it was about disinformation, which I'm very interested in because I have had to deal with the repercussions of that in my family. So I actually first did the audiobook because I was so used to hearing her voice. So this is when I did my skim reread. That was the first time I've actually read it with my eyes. But they always refer to her as Barb McQuade, so it feels really weird for me to say Barbara McQuade.
Okay. Well, I don't listen to that podcast. My chosen Substack and podcast on YouTube is from the Mueller, She Wrote crew. So they have one called Daily Beans, and it's like the daily news roundup, but they mix it in with like humor and swearing and some good news. And so like that is
I need
where
to listen to that
every day. Yeah. So we had some folks show up to say hello, and I'm guessing that because this is a new release, it probably won't have been read by too many people, but maybe you've heard of it. Let us know in the chat. Eva's here. Catpot is here. Hello. Ben is here. No friends. Greg is here. Yeah, thank you. It's actually a bandana, and I dipped it in cold water because it's hot out here, and Melinda agrees. She's an AC. So, yes. Wait, all those tabs? What are we looking at? I don't know. You can't see my tabs, can you? I have several here. Tell me what you're talking about. Diana's here. Hello. And Julie. Hello.
Hi, Julie.
Yay. So, I've got loads of questions. You could see I did the lovely thing on the side.
Yeah.
But mine is a library book, so they're definitely like taking off and bending the corners. Disinformation. I feel like it's not the hottest topic. It's not what people are pushing forward as like the root of all evil in our public today. Why was this the one that shook you up, the one that you chose for Agitation August?
Well, as I said, I've seen it happen in my family, most notably with my mother. And to be fair, there were some elements of dementia mixed in with that, but she started on the disinformation path like in 2008, like before it was really a thing. And just seeing the sort of person she turned into and how these things were affecting her. And no matter what I did to try to say, no, this isn't true, her belief was if it were on TV and she's watching Fox News, it had to be true, right? Yeah. And I'm like, no. So that's where I kind of got started with it. Even now, I still deal with it. So, my husband now, I'm dealing with it. And he's does not have dementia. He has advanced degrees. And I'm like, come on.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. And the funny thing is I have it in my family as well, but it's the younger generation. It's the Gen Z, Gen Alpha. I'm not sure if they're like mid-20s now. And it's the whole thing of like when you tell them, they spit back what they've heard and haven't questioned. And so that's one of the things where we're really struggling. I don't think this book goes into too much of the solutions. It's a much smaller set at the back that is about how to counteract disinformation. And they're mostly things that I've heard of before, but it does a really good job. Like this would be a good one to have in paper in your library because it'll tell you all the things that were done because forgetting, oh yeah, there's this whole encyclopedia of shenanigans of wrongdoing that has built up to where we are now. And I think we're in a path to have people just erase all that from history.
Yep.
So
along with a lot of other things they're trying to erase from history.
Right. So. Okay, so starting in on the questions. Before I start in, let me remind people that we've been doing this all month. If you're new here and you're from Melinda's channel and wondering what this is, we've got a link to the playlist down below to hear all 16 guests for the month. We've got a link to the bingo cards. You can still listen to all the interviews if you want to binge them at once and get your bingo words. You can look at Instagram for the calendar to see who is up for the rest of the week because they've got some fabulous books that they've chosen and more down below. So check it out down in the description. All right. So what did I have first? Who seems to be most at fault? And this is just your opinion, not like a book report. You could just your head. Who is most at fault in this age of disinformation? Is it the media? Is it education? Is it civil society? Who do you feel like deserves them?
I think it's the media. And I think I don't want to say I think it's education. I think it might be a lack of education.
Well, the education system. Yeah.
I have kids who are, as of next week, they'll both be in high school. And I do know that in the schools, they are actually trying to teach them how to think critically. So I think that's a good thing. But also the people who are promoting all this disinformation, one of the things they attack is education. So there's that. But I would say the media is really it. The two big sort of pots of it are, you have social media, which is the Wild West.
Oh, you're counting that in the media. Okay.
I'm counting social media in media. And I'm talking about the big platforms like Facebook and formerly Twitter and all those. It's the Wild West. But then you also have, your cable news, which I think is its own devil. So, and other news sources like that. It really started, I think, with talk radio in the, 90s, early 2000s, and it kind of grew into something else. Because the message, the disinformation message, and I think one of the big points that Barbara McQuade makes is that this isn't a case of people just being mistaken and saying things that they're just mistaken about.
Not misinformation, disinformation.
This is disinformation. Yeah. They know what they're doing. This is planned, and they use the media. Social media works really well for this, but also things like cable news to get that out to people. And so I would definitely stick it all I'm putting a lot of the blame on the media.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to ask about like media outlets that are institutions, especially to the liberal left, the traditional liberal left. And I'm thinking right now off the cuff that like when I think of the New York Times, the Washington Post before its current owner, they seemed like bastions of truth. They seemed like places that would hold the line, kind of like how we would think of Harvard University and how it would not capitulate until it did. Again, previously. But I feel like they've been hollowed out from within, and there's a lot of incentives working on them, business wise, that like journalism really has no base to fall back on. So they're easy to fall prey to, well, our bottom line is this, and therefore we need to do this.
Well, newspapers, along with cable news, the bottom line is their business. And so they get their money by either people tuning in or clicking or buying. I don't know, people actually read newspapers anymore. Clicking on. One thing you can, if you look on social media and you see, and these are New York Times, Washington Post, well-known names, and you see some of the headlines they post, which are horribly inaccurate in terms of what the article actually is. But they've fallen into the clickbait trap because that's how they get their money. Right. It used to be, mainstream media was pretty safe because there were safeguards. If they did something that was purposely wrong, there were consequences to that. And just aren't anymore. Right.
The norms have been shattered. I think that is like the headline of the 2020s.
And I remember early on in all of this, we'll say like mid 2000s, you can't trust the mainstream media was one of the first things we would hear. You can't trust the mainstream media. Well, then who are you going to trust? The guy who's writing a blog from his mother's basement? Because, who are you? The mainstream media at least had some guardrails.
Yeah.
And
okay. And when you say, I just got distracted by the comments. I'm going to try to go back and forth. But when you said it's a company and so it has to bow to the bottom line, well, then I think of the education system and the fact that that has also been hollowed out because it's a state run system. There's public schools and private schools here in the U.S., but the state-run public schools should have that base as well, but they really don't. It's one of these divide and conquer, privatize and lift up, and let everyone else fall behind affairs. What do you think?
It's going to get bad because now, public education, and I'm talking about K through 12 at this point, relies so much on funding and federal funding, which I don't even know what the status of that is now since they want to get rid of the Department of Education. But there's going to be a point where if you want to fund your schools, you're going to have to play along, unless things change, which I hope they do. But it becomes a very financial situation that we're in. It's like, well, it shouldn't be with education. Even in the college settings, state schools are being threatened. Private schools, you look at, I think it's NYU. Was it NYU or Columbia that
Columbia was the first one I heard of?
Yeah. But then you also have Harvard. So.
Right. Yeah. Because, I'm thinking about newspapers losing money in the digital age. And then you've got colleges. You got Harvard. That's like the most known, most prized, most feted university in the nation. And they don't have enough to feel secure in their values. That's like really striking to me.
Yeah.
Woo. So let's see. I'm going to catch up so I don't get too far behind with the comments. Ben says, I quite often have to discuss things that my eldest has heard, trying to drive home the idea of verifying before believing and sharing. Yeah, good point. Diane has tried to read many of the books for Agitation August because she's an all-star. She says, I actually didn't read this one yet. Might check out the podcast and or listen to author interviews. Excellent. And then we just had a lot of people agreeing with you that the media was the worst culprit. Media. Hi, Mom. She says there used to be an iron wall between news and advertising, and that was eliminated. So news became much more manipulated. Yeah.
And that was with the fall of the fairness doctrine.
Yes. And there's two things that I got confused because she talked about equal time, which was like a norm that also got thrown out later, but the fairness doctrine got thrown out legally in the earlier
Yes.
Talking about. I didn't know that those were two separate things.
Yeah, they were. Well, the fairness doctrine got thrown out, which was that you have to cover basically, you can't be partisan, you have to cover both sides. And what survived from that was the idea of equal time, which.
But that's for advertising, which I thought was weird.
Yeah.
there was this, it carried over, but it was for advertising. If you're going to show an ad for one candidate, you have to show one for the other during the same commercial break. That was the example. And I was like, oh, so it's not inviting people on. It's
no,
it's different.
It is different. So I can't tell you the last time I watched a commercial, so I can't.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Do you have like YouTube Premium or whatever?
I do YouTube Premium. I do streaming everything. So I have not seen a commercial since probably the last time I watched football, which was 2 seasons ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I get them on the Pandora radio that I listen to. I get them on YouTube to the channels that I listen to. I get them on Netflix. Do I?
Amazon Prime has it. Unless you have to pay a little bit more, of course. You have to pay a little bit more to get the commercials taken off. So
it's crazy.
But
Libro Paradiso, hello. Talk radio in the 90s took off among people I knew who didn't follow the news, but liked to rant about politics and society. Oh, a name comes to mind for that one. And I think the phrase I heard recently was rest in piss. And I thought that's
that is very appropriate.
Yeah, for old Rush, I think. Ven says, doesn't help that there are a lot of the papers here. A lot of the papers are owned by the same company family. Does not help to give balance. You don't say. You don't say, Ven. Yeah. No, I saw a couple things in this book. One in particular example that Barb McQuade used about seeing which articles got the most clicks. And I know she was talking about WAPO when it went over, because I've read the Merchants of Truth book. And I remember that scene where someone else walks in and there's the clicker thing and everyone is affected mentally by like their journalism being held to the standard of like clicking in real time, which is just awful. Yeah. And then Libro Paradiso says, Facebook did the same in its own way for that generation who didn't follow the news. Suddenly they were quoting cable news talking points. Very good point. It's because we don't have a shared reality. We don't have the same place to get news. And there is such a divide in what people are providing because of their incentives that it's really hard to talk to someone if you don't have the same basis of facts.
And the algorithm doesn't help. Because everyone has a different feed on whatever social media you're on. And I know some of the things that come across my husband's feed are because he's in groups that are not even political, but they tend to have conservative members in them. Things like rock hunting and things like this.
Licenses. It's hunting season and all that. Yeah.
So the algorithms they're all different. Are pretty, I think that there's a level of sinister with algorithms.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Okay. What about, I liked this question because it brought in the term Cassandra. So, in the book, McQuade talks about folks who sort of predicted some of these things happening. And I wondered, who was your favorite Cassandra for people who foretold these tactics, people who saw this coming and tried to get us to prepare in some way. And we obviously fell down on the job, but who does it make you think of?
So I think the obvious is Hillary Clinton, but mine is actually, and I checked the date that this actually happened. It was October 17th, 2005. So we're almost 20 years past this.
Nice.
It was the very first episode of Stephen Colbert's The Colbert Report on Comedy Central. And that's where he introduced the term truthiness. Where he did his whole thing, like, it just feels true. I know the facts aren't there or anything, but it feels true. So therefore it has to be true. Right. And that I think is sort of the fresh meat of disinformation. People don't want to be uncomfortable. Facts. Yeah. They want something that makes they're comfortable with. So I think that feels right, whether or not it is right or not. And that was the first kind of definition of it that really started to kind of congeal in my mind of this is what's going on.
And she does a pretty good job giving a rundown of like the psychological reasons why we'll believe things. And I think cognitive dissonance was the one where like you don't want to change how you already think until you don't believe something, even though it's
confirmation bias.
Confirmation bias?
Yeah.
Is that
confirmation bias is basically where you look for things, you search out things that support your held belief.
Right.
Instead of being open to the actual information, the actual facts.
Right.
So it is cognitive dissonance, but it's also confirmation
okay.
bias.
Gotcha. I pointed to a much more recent clip, which was Kamala Harris on Colbert's Late Show, and she said, "I told you all this was coming. It's in all the recordings, but what I did not see was the capitulation." And that money line, that was so good.
Yep,
love that word too. Oh, and speaking of words, this is the perfect time to sneak in your bingo card word. So, what is your favorite $5 word of the day?
Mine is halcyon, which it means like days gone by, but it really reminds me of this time of the year when I was a kid, the summer, like the last days of summer and the golden summer, and also before the world fell apart.
There you go.
So mine's halcyon.
Boy. 1, 2, 3. 4, 5. That gives us 5 more bingos with 1 word. That's awesome. Yay. And just to let everybody know, if you're playing the bingo and you got one of those, all you need to do is send a message to me with the names of the people whose words they are and the 4 in a row, email or Instagram or Blue Sky, wherever you can find me. And then I've got gift cards for books at the end, which is what every booktuber wants. Am I right? So I got Kamala. Another couple that she mentioned in terms of referencing were Ruth Ben-Ghiat, who wrote Strongman, and Michael Lewis, and she quoted The Fifth Risk. And so those are ones I was interested in looking up based on her referring to them. It's pretty
The Fifth Risk has been recommended to me quite a bit. I haven't gotten to it yet, but
cool. So authoritarian regimes on the rise in the UK, in Hungary, in Russia. What is, and this is an easy one, what is the American vulnerability in particular? Why are we going to get caught in the same trap, even though we're different from those nations?
Well, a big thing is social media. There's also, we're in a shift in our population where the white man is not necessarily still on top. And that is a big population
numbers wise.
Yeah, that's a big group of the population that's now scared. And so they're looking for someone who's going to restore them. And that is what 45, 47 has promised them. So,
okay. Well, that's true. I was going to the fact that we have freedom of speech protections that are unlike those other nations. But yeah,
we're losing our freedom of speech protections.
What's that?
I said we're losing our freedom of speech protections as part of all this. I mean, just today or yesterday, and I know this means nothing, but he signed an executive order saying we get a year in jail for burning a flag, which is protected speech.
Oh dear.
So yeah.
It's coming. It's a little late.
Yeah.
But it's coming. This is tomorrow. No, this is tomorrow. Ven and I will be talking about 1984 in another book. And the new speak and the erasing history is just so very clear. And she remarks on this, and this is one of my notes was in here, like, oh, it's 1984. It's all those things that I was learning about. Fascism. Great. So, and here's one thing that has affected me with a lot of the books that I've been reading for Agitation August is this was written last fall or like a year plus ago. And when I read books from before Trump's reelection, it's this weird feeling of like those halcyon days. Like, you guys thought that was bad? Like, oh, yeah, like there's this sort of like, what would you call it? Curdling my wame in Scottish. It's just a bad feeling. So it's been hard to read some of these. Did you have any sort of similar?
Very much so. Yeah. Very, very much so. Because as I said, I think before we started, I actually first read this like in December of last year. I did the audio. So the wound was fresh. And so a lot of this in this book and a lot of books that came out in like the summer, early fall had dealt with issues like this, but they were sort of like, well, this is what happened and it's not going to happen. Now we just need to not let it happen again. And it's happened again.
Yeah.
I did have another one of those. I was reading a book by Anne Lamott. And this book came out in the early 2000s, and a lot of it is her dealing with her stress around the George W. Bush administration and how the world's ending. And I'm like, oh, honey, Oh, honey, you have no clue what's happening.
Yeah. I'm listening to a biography of Octavia Butler, and she foretold a lot of this because she was describing her own present. And the biographer was pointing out the fact that science fiction is often describing the present. It's describing the current conditions, because if you analyze them and the, motives underneath, you'll really see where you're headed. And it's creepy how close she is with Parable of the Sower. I'm just saying. So if you want to listen to that conversation, it was the first one. It was fun. It was so good, and like really good book, but also really creepy how much it foretold.
I started Parable of the Sower last year on like the date that it started.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's so cool.
I had to put it down after one day because that was the day that Kamala Harris became the nominee. And I was like, I don't want to mess with my joy.
Oh,
I haven't read past like the first day yet.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Let's see. I've got questions that are about like solutions. I'm wondering, before we get there, what about rule of law? I studied rule of law a little bit when I was studying international development, but I'm wondering, like, we hear a lot about law and order, and I'm wondering if we can chant rule of law instead of law and order, and like if that has a better chance of hammering back at people.
There is a big section of the population that I don't think understands what rule of law or law and order really is. And they are the ones who think it's great that the National Guard is in Washington, D.C.
Okay. So quick primer. I think law and order is a phrase that has been co-opted by people who want the law to create order, and they want order to be prioritized over law. So peace at any cost kind of thing. Right. Peace for the elites, right? And the rule of law is actually prioritizing the law over order. So you could have some messy protests. You could have a lot of angry people at town halls, but you know what? You're going to procedurally go by the law so that everyone has a fair say.
Which is how it should be.
Right.
Which is how it should be.
We're set up to operate. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're trying to, the guardrails are for the rule of law to continue to be in effect, but it is being warped, I think. I'm going to check in so I don't get too far behind. Libra says, I used to watch Alex Jones when he was on Access TV in Austin in the 90s. Wow. He aired at night, ranting about the Clintons and Bush families, conspiratorial and paranoid talk. Years later, he reached a huge audience with InfoWars. Yeah. Well, now he's chilling. I think he's been convicted and forced to pay millions of dollars to the Sandy Hook victims, which I am very pleased about.
He had to sell InfoWars, and The Onion bought it.
Oh!
Yeah.
Justice. Yeah, I don't know what he's doing now, but it's not really on my plate to worry about. Greg says, a level of sinister with algorithms. That phrase resonates. He says, Jocelyn came in. Hello, dear friend. Cat Paw says, I find it interesting how news are presented in different lights in different countries. UK, US, Australia, Germany, they all place their own angle on it, and I try to find the middle. That's an excellent way. Triangulation, to use like an engineering metaphor. I love it. But I'm no news hog, and I detest spin misinformation so much. Yeah. If you can see through it, it's good for you, but it's also super annoying. Yeah, I feel it. Still haven't read 1984. Well, there's a graphic novel version that I used at a library. So there's different versions if you're curious. Libra says, Richard Hofstadter in Paranoid Style in American Politics and Anti-Intellectualism in American Life. 2 interesting books about why Americans easily embrace irrational ideas. Oh, interesting. Okay. Star in that for later. Ven says 1984 feels like prophecy at this point. Yeah, pretty much. Hello, Lindsay. Welcome. Portland folks in the house. Eva says human behavior isn't super hard to predict. Yeah. It's just when we have competing incentives or competing motivations that you're like, ooh, which one's going to win? And it gets to be a little game theory. Eva says depressing that we keep doing the stupid thing. Yes, and I will put in here that in the biography of Octavia Butler, they talk about her idea of the human contradiction, which is that we want, what is it? We have intelligence, but we also crave hierarchy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like this weird, you can't, one is you being used to achieve the other. And it's like this weird self-destructive cycle. It's very interesting to hear about. Greg says, Libra, I'm glad you brought up Hofstadter. I first read The Paranoid Style. He is another who saw this. Oh, the Cassandra. Okay. Got it. Mom says, people don't understand rule of law, just like they don't understand the reason for the 3 levels of government. Right. Yeah. And I mean, I've studied politics, but I still don't know how the judiciary works. One of the podcasts, the Mueller She Wrote podcast I was listening to, said something. It was Joyce Vance, and she was describing how an equity case is different from a civil case or something. I was like, I thought we had civil and criminal. Now we have equity? What kind of more to learn? So it can be a little overwhelming, but I'm trying to get up on it, which is all I can do. He did Ghost Readers, a great historian. Nice to know. Justice Sandra Day O'Connor predicted this when they stopped requiring civics to be taught in the schools. Good point. Eva says, oh, I remember civics. Yeah, Gen X. Okay, so there's the dividing line. It was optional, but it's where we learned about voting. Interesting. Ooh, Jocelyn is intrigued by the graphic novel version. Oh my gosh. Greg says he read 1984 in 1984.
Wow.
And then Lindsay says, Octavia Butler's books are amazingly relevant to today's world. For sure. Wow. Great comments, everybody. Did you have anything you wanted to ask? I'm just going to pause for breath here.
I'm loving the comments, though. So
yeah, me too. Let's see. Parallels to 1984 abound, as in destroying truth and people giving up trying to find it. Oh, so this is a really good quote sort of early on, where McQuade was talking about one of the tactics for disinformation is destroying the truth, meaning putting out lies, meaning putting out questionable things, meaning so many different versions of events that it's very difficult to tell which is the truth, which is the factual event. And so people give up trying after so many floodings of the zone. And that is what they've done for climate change and racial equality and history itself now.
Yeah.
Is there any particular situation where you can recall like seeing this in action that really got to you, that agitated you?
You know, one of the disagreements my husband and I have is over the climate issue. There is one thing I have noticed with some people is they think that memes are news.
Oh, honey.
Yeah. No. But, you know, my husband's like, well, I've seen the data. And I'm like, well, what data are you looking at? Who put out that data? You know, this sort of thing. But it is, I mean, that is a tactic to throw out as much as you can so that you dilute what the truth is. And, you know, you see that, you know, during the election or the last couple elections, there was this sort of running insult of 47's opponents, whoever they were, running around, calling them names, everything they could come up with, just so they get so drowned out with what they're trying to say. You know, and it doesn't matter if it's who he's running against in the Republican primary or if it's Kamala Harris, it doesn't matter. Just let's dilute everything he can say, put out as much garbage about this as you can so that you can't hear the truth in it.
Yeah. And some of it, you know, we vacillate between how stupid is he and how strategic is he. And one of the strategic things I think that was Trump or his team was, and an example that she brought up was that they made an announcement about he's going to get arrested when they knew some New York state indictment was coming up. And they did it before something would happen so that they could get ahead of it. And people would be like, well, he wasn't arrested. Is it done? Is he off? Like all this kind of stuff. And the rule of law says that you don't comment in an ongoing investigation. So the people who are actually doing their jobs couldn't defend themselves or defend their institution, and that made them weak. And you're just like, you're violating the norm, and that's making you win in the public eye. There's got to be a way to fight back against that sort of BS, because that was a really good example. I thought I was like,
that is a good example. Yeah. And it's hard with him because even when he was going through that trial, all the gag orders they put on him
Mm.
And
Oh
none of them were followed.
yeah. Yeah, the immunity thing just still boggles my mind, and I don't have enough legal expertise to understand like why that happened. But yeah. Then there's double standards. So one of the things that came up was Tucker Carlson's Fox News show and how he was sued. And he won the suit because he was able to argue that he's not telling facts. And then the judge said, well, then you should advertise that you're not a news show. And I'm like, well, he didn't do that, but now he's gone. So he's doing his own thing. And I thought, you can't have it both ways.
No,
you can't say you're a news show and then be so divided. And this tiny little victory that was eked out was so depressing. It's like, yeah, the judge stood on the line and held the line, but like, how many millions of people were affected by that joker and didn't hear that tiny little correction? You know, that's hard to take for me.
Because his viewers thought he was news. You know, as my mother would say, if it's on TV, it's got to be true. They can't lie on TV. She passed before the $750 million settlement, so she missed that. But you know, that was, especially an older generation, there was this trust that you had when you turned on the news, and usually at that point it was network news, but then also cable news. Well, if they said it, it's got to be true. Right. And that's like the people who don't know the difference between a news article and an op-ed. That's another thing I see a lot.
Yes. News article, op-ed. Yeah. Opinion.
Right.
Yeah. There was one thing in the solutions category that I could not believe. Okay. So Section 230, for those who don't know, this is like a tiny little article from the mid-90s when the internet was just beginning, where they defined the legal liability of people who are publishing news on the internet, right? And so now that includes Twitter, because Twitter publishes news on the internet. So stuff like that. And the recommendation is for Section 230 to be updated and modified to catch up with like what nonsense we see going on today. But the modification that's suggested is that the ads at least have to be vetted. And I'm like, you're paying for stuff and they're not required to vet it? That's allowed? I cannot believe that was not on there already. Like if you are the publisher, it's not someone else putting their content and then you can not be held liable. Like you're being paid to put it on. You're definitely the publisher. You should check whether or not it's true. Oh, that made me mad. Did you have any points in the book that you remember, or on the skim again, where it was just like, like I didn't know that, and that ticks me off even more?
You know, she said something, and I agree with almost everything she says on here, but she said something in the solutions thing that I took a little umbrage with, which is, you know, her thing was, if you're watching Fox News, turn it off, turn on CNN. And I'm like, if you're watching Fox News, turn it off. Because I really think, and yes, Fox News has a lot of problems, more than any of the other ones, I think. But I just think cable news, 24-hour cable news is not good for humanity.
Correct.
And it's like, no, and it's not even a question of any of them. I mean, on one level, it's not a question of the people behind cable news trying to be malevolent or anything. It's just human nature that if it's on all the time, you're going to get sucked into it because that's human nature.
Glued, yeah.
But now they're trying to steal, you know, viewers from each other. So let's make ourselves louder. Let's have people fighting. Let's have those sound bites. Right. And you're just letting yourself become prey to them by tuning into it. And I think one of the best things people can do is just turn off cable news. Just don't watch it.
So she has another part in the book where she mentions that, but instead of turning on CNN, the example I remember, she says, go out and talk to people. So that you're having like different ecosystems have to come up against each other. And I thought that's really a good idea, because you could have someone like Cat Paw in the chat who's watching from different countries and could have a vastly more general view, a more diverse view of the news. And then you'd be very well served from talking to someone in real life or through a screen, at least.
And even if it's not even as drastic a difference as that, you know, I live in suburbia. If I were to talk to someone who lives 2 miles away in the rural part, we have very different concerns and priorities. We wouldn't know it unless we talk to each other. So, I mean, just talk to, I mean, everyone's going to have a slightly different viewpoint. And until you start listening to other people, you're just going to stay in your own little echo chamber.
Right. Instead of touch grass, we could have a Zoom.
Have a Zoom.
Zoom with someone, you know? Like, excellent. She talked about boiling down critical thinking skills and how it's really hard to do that in tweet or bumper sticker. And I was like, I don't know. I've seen some good bumper stickers lately. Any lately where that made you like stop and think about something? You're like, oh, that's good. And I'll ask the chat too, because that's something that may be easier not to think on the spot. But yeah, ask for comments of good bumper stickers you've seen lately that are about critical thinking. Anybody?
Oh, let me see. I don't know.
Okay, you talked about the shrinking white folks. Oh, I had a really great quote on page 114. Someone named Rid, who is a researcher, and I didn't know the name, but they were saying the old art of slow-moving, highly skilled, close-range, labor-intensive psychological influence, meaning the people who do the work of psychological influence, like the CIA or whatever, right? Israel, is now high-tempo, low-skilled, remote, and disjointed. It's kind of like asymmetrical warfare, I think is the comparison they're making there. And so the influence of the internet is just diabolical. I mean, wow, I want to follow that thread. That sounds really interesting.
You know, there's this go back to memes, but there's one meme that I have seen people on both sides post, and it's interesting that they both post this. And that's like, we used to think the problem was people didn't have enough information. And now we know that's not the problem. And I'm like, people on both sides are posting this. The problem isn't too much information. It's where are you getting your information?
Yeah. Woo. All right, I'm going to catch up again here. Let's see. Eva says, I'm loving the chat as well. Yep. Dan says, got to drop out early. Supper awaits. Catch it on the replay. See you then. Eva says, 9/11 deniers made me give up a bit, you know? Yeah. Same reality, folks. You got to join us. Jocelyn says, it's been a while since I've read anything by the Grand Dame. Last book I read was a collection of her stories, Wild Seed. Excellent. I'm hearing about a lot of the books, and I'm hoping I'll forget about the plot lines before I read them, because they're going into a lot of detail. Spoilers.
Yeah.
Libro says the president is good at tapping into irrational fears, which is why his executive actions regarding ICE, the National Guard, and using the military domestically isn't angering more people. Yeah, you appeal to this.
That was something that jumped out the first time I heard this book, because I always knew, I guess, that cable news, I'm thinking specifically cable news at this point, would use anger to kind of draw people in. And then Barbara McQuade says it's actually fear. They're creating fear, and then that's what keeps you tuned in. It makes a lot of sense. And, you know, when I looked at my mother, that's what was pulling her in, was fear of something.
Yes. Fascism 101. Mom says, add the newest sources for disinformation. It can put people's voices and faces to whatever misstatements. I saw one the other day and had to look twice to even begin to suspect AI. Yeah. That's a new level of media literacy. That's it's like tech literacy, really. I definitely have gotten fooled. She talks about getting fooled. Like, it's hard, even in tweets, like with videos, all sorts of different media. Eva says, everyone is too poor to do much about much right now. The machine is working so well. Sad, but true. In the words of Roy, who's the Daily Show? Roy
Moore. Is that right? Not Roy Moore. He was a senator. Roy. I know who you're talking about. I see him.
I'm thinking Roy Orbison. I know that's not it.
I was thinking Roy Moore, who I think was that. I'm sorry?
Roy Wood Jr. is the Daily Show.
Roy Wood Jr. Yes, that's right.
I think, yeah. Catpaw agrees with your mom. Lindsay says the immunity is just wild to me and so scary. Yeah, the immunity finding, the legal. Catpaw says, I started reading blogs in the early to mid 2000s because it was one person's opinion, not pretending to be the truth. Now that's changed, and so many write for clicks than anything else. Interesting. Oh, yeah. I wonder if there are books about this. I haven't even thought about blogs because, like, it's shifted so much. People have shifted away from it.
You know, one of the dark skeletons in my closet is that my sister-in-law She doesn't blog anymore, but she was one of the most influential right-wing bloggers for a while.
Oh boy.
And that I saw her put out misinformation that I would see other people repeat elsewhere. And I'd be like, what?
Yikes. Yeah. Nero says, unfortunately, the federal courts for over 40 years have given the executive branch more power, and the makeup of the Supreme Court is a culmination of this. Fair enough. Yeah. Well, enabled by a legislative captive session. Thanks, Mitch. Just talking to people in general takes us outside the algorithm. Yes. Healthy. Greg says, it's amazing what you learn when you talk to people.
Yes.
We have to be reminded. So it's a good thing. So many 47 supporters don't even follow the news. They're just Team T and haven't updated their fandoms in a while. Yeah, there was a line about that. Let me think if I have it. It was on the Republican platform, which I didn't realize in 2024.
Yep.
They just said, resolved, we like this guy. They didn't even bother putting together a platform. They just said, this is our dear leader.
Yeah.
And I was like, I did not realize that. That's one thing. That's not one of the things that agitated me. Just made me like drug, like the overload. Yeah. Silently putting their flags away as they catch wind of things, at least around here. Still red, but they aren't so loud. Yeah. And this goes with one of Eva's earlier comments about someone who called out Eva and then was very vehement on the right and then sort of quieted down on the right, but didn't take back her like nasty comment, which can be really hurtful. Yeah. Kappa says, as long as it hurts people they hate, they don't care. Yeah. Greg says, my favorite bumper sticker is citation fucking needed. That's a good one. That's fun. Nice. Catpaw agrees. Love it. Julie says, regarding lessons in civics, we no longer have checks and balances. Not what our founding fathers wanted. Yeah. Hello, Gareth. Welcome. We love a good sauce. Sauce? Sass?
Source?
Sauce, and I think it's just like a metaphor I'm not clicking onto. But okay, so in the last 10 minutes, we're gonna jump into the solutions chat. What has this book moved you to act on? How have you reached out to either inform or join some of the solutions that she suggests in your community?
I have been much more vigilant about. I've always been pretty careful about my news sources. I've been much more vigilant about it. Someone in the comments talked about seeing the same news from different countries. And one thing that I do is my probably top 4 sources of information are the AP, Reuters, the BBC, and the Guardian. And I make sure that I have non-American sources looking in. Still the BBC and the Guardian have, their spin. I do think it's diluted when you're looking at someone else's country, though.
Right, because then you can cross-reference as well.
Yeah.
What about talking with people-wise? Is there anything that you kind of think twice and go, oh, not going to engage, or, oh, I'm going to say this in a different way so they can receive it better? Any kind of tips?
I have not found a way for some people to talk so it doesn't, so the message gets across. I have been much better about not engaging. I've just kind of learned it's just gas on the fire sometimes.
Yeah.
I have a Facebook troll. It is my husband's friend. And I think it's been a year since I've responded to one of his comments. And I know it's driving him crazy, but I'm not going to feed into this.
Yeah. Yeah. Good for you. Okay. How about patriotism? How do we re-co-opt patriotism? She points out, I think truthfully, or accurately, I should say, in the book, that patriotism has been co-opted as this like very performative thing that is claimed by the right, and really thoughtful patriotism, like where we're honoring the ideal of the founders, which was equality and freedom and these things. It's very different. So how do we take it back?
For a long time, it really, it still does. It really bothers me that when I see someone hanging an American flag out their house when it's not like the 4th of July or something, I have an assumption. I just try to stop.
Oh, yeah. Oh yeah.
Because especially if they have them in their car and they're driving down the street, because I'm like, what is that?
If it's a big like dually truck with, that's on the other side. Yeah.
But this is a recent development that I think is actually going to start. It's causing upset on the right, and it's around patriotism. And I have issues with this person, but I appreciate what he's doing now, and that's Gavin Newsom.
I think some others in the chat might be in the same camp as you, Melinda.
Yes. I mean, I think that what he's doing right now, and I am, I'm talking about what he's doing right now with the social media, or what the person who's running in social media is doing. And a lot of that, the language he's using where he's parroting Trump and all this, and he's starting to take back that idea of patriotism in the same way that Trump tried to take it, which is really causing people on the right to have problems with that. And I don't know if they're to the point now where they realize they're looking in a mirror, and that's the whole point. But it is the fact that it has been so effective so far, I think is interesting.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And for those of you out of the US who don't know what we're talking about, it's a redistricting / gerrymandering / illegal power grab little fight that's going on in the States these days.
Yeah.
And we'll all be hearing about it during the special election in November. So tune in then for the latest.
Yes.
I've got two more things on my notes. One was that I thought it was really great the way she framed, we have to protect the integrity of our information infrastructure, just like we do our financial infrastructure. And I was like, ooh, yes, because you're appealing to security and it's infrastructure. Like that's very neutral, I think, words and information infrastructure. That seems something that you could get bipartisan support on, right?
Yeah, you would think so. But, it's eating, when she talks about information infrastructure, I am thinking, when I first read this, I'm thinking about, okay, we need to understand that these established, and this is back in December, these established news sources, the Washington Post, the New York Times, may not be perfect. Wall Street Journal may have their spins, but we have to kind of understand that they are the sort of bedrock of this.
Right. The middleist road we have for everyone to trust.
Right. Yeah. But that's disintegrating right now. One of independent journalists I follow is V Spear, and from Under the Desk News. And she for a while she was filling in for the guy who does the Washington Post TikToks. And this was like last year. And it was after Jeff Bezos had bought the Washington Post. And there was a culture there that Jeff Bezos would not comment on any criticism of Amazon.
Right.
That you don't do that. And since, say, January, that has completely changed.
Fair.
Yeah. That has completely changed. And it's like, we have to be really careful that we don't say the thing that upsets people, even if it's true. And that was never a case. Jeff Bezos was very hands-off until the election. I think the first sort of harbinger of that is when they pulled their endorsement right before the election.
Right. Okay. Yes. So I guess if we want to dig more on that, we can look to other things for infrastructure, like the Section 230 suggestion and something about the courts interpreting some of the liability issues, maybe like defamation and libel laws, because those are really like weird in the US, that kind of thing. So she has some good ideas. And then the final one, and then I'll catch up with the chat, is the closing on page 263. She talks about media literacy and people being able to recognize fascism when they see it. And I'm reminded of something I saw on TikTok. So bear with me. I'm going to take you on a little walk. There's a trend, I don't know, probably a couple weeks ago now, where people were saying, this person said this to me and they thought it would have this effect. It really had that effect, and they totally missed the point. And the hashtag was holy fucking airball. Like just swing and a miss, right? Yeah. And I really want to do a TikTok or a reel where it's like watching the Hunger Games, being against the Capitol, siding with the rebels in Star Wars, and then being like, oh yeah, I'm a Trumper. Like, what? Airball missed the fucking point.
Yep. That was like during the election when conservative women tried to embrace the Dixie Chicks as speaking for them. And they're like, do you know about the Dixie Chicks?
I mean, I know about their fall from grace, and then I don't know.
They have a song called I'm Not Ready to Make Nice, which was sort of like this, like, you know, I got death threats, I'm not going to make nice with you. And it is and there were a group of conservative women who are like, well, we're just not ready to make nice. And I'm like, have you heard that song? Do you know what that song is about? Because it's not what you think it is.
Oh, and they were using it for their yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
Wow. But that's when the artists can say you can't use my thing because you're using
and
it.
It was hard because that was not politicians doing it. That was just everyday people. But yeah, if you look at Trump, how many people have said you can't use my music? So
it's glorious. It's one of the like tiny little waves we can push back on. I love it.
Yeah.
Go musicians. All right. So catching up on the chat here, we've got Libro says, not that I'm advocating more guns, but when the right gets angry, they rant armed with guns, holding American flags, claiming to be fighting for liberty. Maybe liberals should do that as well. Yeah, but they get treated differently by the police. So that is a little internal problem. Perception goes a long way.
In Portland, when the liberals had to fight for liberty, they had to do it with leaf blowers. So
France 24 and DW News from Germany are excellent.
Okay.
Some other outlets to look for. Gareth says, I trust The Guardian, even though I'm aware it leans the same way that I do. Awareness.
Yeah.
Who knew?
And it's fine. All news has its bias at some point. You just need to be aware of it.
Right. So. The point of the BBC is to be impartial because everyone's paying for it, right? So it should be. Yep. Mom says, absolutely yes to getting the news from other countries. It's available because of the same internet options. Yep. I know she reads some of the Japanese news, which is pretty different what they choose to highlight. Libro says, embrace the flag, which has been co-opted by the right. But I can't remember whose conversation I was talking about the symbols. Oh, it was Jenna. So if you have a flag, does that mean someone's going to think you're a Republican? If you're wearing a paperclip, is that someone thinking you're going to be a white woman who's, you know, not really a liberal ally? These sort of things that have like moved back and forth in terms of what symbols mean to different populations. Like that can be hard to keep track of. Eva says, the neighbors with U.S. flags tell me one thing. The one with the gargoyle. Mom says the parodies are effective because the one thing can't stand is being made fun of. Yes, keep it going. We just saw a new Randy Rainbow video today. Did you see that? The Lion King parody. It's great. Yeah. Kappa says, I don't get patriotism. Like the concept doesn't compute. Like I'm an alien from another planet. And you're not alone. So when I was talking about national sort of feeling, Marianne had the same sort of pushback because she was like, I think you have a duty more to be true to yourself and make sure that you're doing what you believe in and like your local community is working than any sort of nation. And I thought it's interesting. Libro says also embrace the founders, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison. They condemned the Alien and Sedition Acts. He was in sedition. Not sure what this means. I may need to like unravel that afterwards since we're wrapping up. But you feel free to write a comment and explain this in a little more detail. I appreciate it. Greg says all conversations circle back to Amazon and its founder. I mean, you're not wrong. Holy hairball would make a great swear alternative for a story. I know that's not what you said, but hey, inspiration. Do with it what you will. Kara says, I've taught the Dixie Chick story many times in my lessons about politics being meshed in with pop music. Interesting. And the recent part as well? Because if I haven't heard of it, I'm guessing Gareth hasn't either. But maybe he has because he's plugged into the music scene. Greg says, I tell people I have guns to keep the government from taking away my banned books. That sounds like an Elaine comment. I love it. What about the Waltons? What are we...
Walmart.
Yeah, but I mean, what is it about? Is this about explain in the comments, Eva? I think we missed it. We went backwards in time in the chat, and so now I'm not sure what that means. But we are rounding the corner at an hour. So thank you, lovely people, for being here and watching along with us and asking fabulous questions and leaving fabulous comments. If you are team rewatch, I would love for you to think about a bumper sticker that was good for critical reading, because I think we see lots of great ones every day. So that'd be fun. And thank you, Melinda, for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. And it was a great read. It was on my TBR. So thank you for giving me the excuse to zero in on Attack from Within. So thank you, everybody. So tomorrow I'm talking with Ven of Ven's Corner. We're doing 1984 and Hell Followed With Us, which, if you didn't know, it's a quote from Revelations. And if that doesn't titillate you, I don't know what will. So we'll see you tomorrow. It is at 10 a.m. Pacific, whatever your time zone. And appreciate everyone being here for Agitation August. Sorry, I'm trying to get the last banner out. Thank you. And take care, everyone. Happy reading.
Bye.